ॐ यच्छन्दसां ऋषभो विश्वरूप छन्दोऽभ्युद्धं मृदात् सम्बभूव सामेन्द्रो मेधया स्पृणोतु अमृतस्य देवधारणो भूयासं शरीरं मे विचर्षणं जिह्वा मे मधुमत्तमा कर्णाभ्यां भूरिविश्रवं ब्रह्मणो कोशोऽसि मेधया पीता श्रुतं मे गोपाय ॐ शान्तिः शान्तिः शान्तिः। I bow down to the Supreme Lord of the Universe, the Vishesh Vishwanatha, along with the primordial mother, the Shakti, who is the presiding deity of Varanasi. I lie prostrate on the sacred soil of Varanasi, which is always sanctified by the nectar-like ripples of Mother Ganga. The most revered chairman of the session, माननीय जयंत जी सहस्रबुद्धे, माननीय उपेंद्र जी त्रिपाठी, माननीय राजकुमार मिश्र महोदय, the learned professors, the distinguished professors on the dais, the learned scholars and professors here of the dais, and the students who have assembled here to make this ceremony a grand success. Let me, at the outset, I would like to extend my thankfulness to Vedic Vigyan Kendra and the organizers of this symposium for giving me an opportunity to be here and share my views with all of you. I also extend my indebtedness to Jayant ji for recommending my name here for delivering this discourse on the Indian knowledge system and on the occasion of the Azadi ka Amrit Mahotsav. I begin with the reverential contemplation of the fact that an unknown young man from India sailed across the sea and reached America to participate in the Parliament of Religions. He had only a faint idea about the Parliament of Religions, and he did not have the real and actual dates and venues known of the commencement of the event. He went there with a scanty amount of money with him, and when he reached there, he came to understand that a sort of introduction is required to participate in the Parliament of Religions. A sort of credential is required. With scanty amount of fund in his hand and the मिक्स करके बोल रहे हैं with a scanty amount of money in his hand, he went there and he found that some sort of credentials are required to be a representative in the Parliament of Religions. He wrote a letter, एक पत्र लिखा भारत में, to the theosophical, to different societies. Most probably it is the Theosophical Society of India. और वहां लिखे कि हमें एक परिचय पत्र प्रदान करें, जिस परिचय पत्रों के द्वारा हम पार्लियामेंट ऑफ रिलीजन में या धर्म महासभा के क्षेत्र में प्रतिनिधित्व कर सके. और as an answer to that letter, he got a reply, let the devil die of cold. Let the devil die of cold. But the devil did not die. Instead, it threw him to the hands of fate. And a Vivekananda never passed unnoticed. He spent some money to travel to Boston, and on his way to Boston, he came across a lady called Catherine. जब ट्रेन में जा रहे थे, कैथरीन नाम के एक लेडी से उनकी साक्षात्कार हुई और उनको उस विषय का जो उनकी जो मन की जो आकुति है, आकुति का प्रकाश हो गया. He expressed his desire to appear in the Parliament of Religions. And this lady called Catherine introduced him to a professor of the Harvard University, Professor Wright. He interacted with Professor Wright. And Professor Wright came with the opinion that Swamiji, I consider yourself to be, Swamiji means Swami Vivekananda. Swamiji, I consider you to be the person who is fit to represent Hinduism on the global platform of the Parliament of Religions. Swami Vivekananda said that unfortunately I don't have any credentials and there is a need for credentials to appear in the Parliament of Religion. परिचय पत्र चाहिए, तब आधार कार्ड था या नहीं, पासपोर्ट था या नहीं, परंतु वो हिंदू धर्म के जो प्रतिनिधि है, इस विषय को प्रकाश करने वाली एक परिचय पत्र चाहिए था. And Professor Wright wrote a letter to the organizers of the Parliament of Religions. This is a person, here is a person who is more qualified than all the professors of our university put together. Here is a person who is more qualified than all the professors of our university put together. To ask for credentials from such a person is to ask the sun whether it has the right to shine. सूरज को रोशनी देने का अधिकार है, ये प्रश्न करना और इनसे परिचय पत्र की मांग करना एक ही बात है, समतुल्य है. And he got an opportunity to deliver his historic speech there at the Parliament of Religions. As we have come to know from the deliberation of Jayanji in the morning, that it was not a single speech, but it was a series of lectures delivered throughout the session, throughout several sessions. He stood before the Western audience and delivered this historic speech with the words, sisters and brothers of America. And he introduced himself like this: I thank you in the name of the most ancient order of monks in the world. I thank you in the name of Mother of Religions. I thank you in the name of millions and millions of Hindu people of all classes and sects. I am proud to belong to a religion which has taught the world both tolerance and universal acceptance. He concluded, sectarianism, bigotry and its horrible descendant fanaticism have long possessed this beautiful art. They have raised this art often and often with human blood, destroyed civilizations and sent whole nations to despair. Had it not been for these horrible demons, human society would have been far more advanced than it is now. But that time is come, and I fervently hope that the bell that tolled this morning in honor of this convention may be the death bell of all fanaticism, of all persecutions with the sword or with the pen, and all uncharitable feelings between the persons wending their way to the same goal. What is the same goal? What is our ultimate goal? The ultimate goal is to attain this selfhood, attain this state of self, attain this state of ultimate reality. Brahmavid, Brahmaiva bhavati. The knower of reality becomes the reality himself. Evaluating this speech, Sister Nivedita, so-called Margaret Noble says, when he started, it was the religious ideas of Hinduism, and when he ended, Hinduism had been created. So the ultimate goal is the Swa or the Swatantrata, Swatantra or Swanirbharata and Swatantra. We know that the word Swatantra has Swa as the prefix, and the word Swa means self, which is equated with the ultimate reality. And this self can be expressed as self-reliance, it can be expressed as self-dependence, self-independence or self-dependence, and freedom from all sorts of limitations and constraints. So this attainment of the state of self is called freedom, which we call moksha, which we call mukti, which we call the freedom from all sorts of limitations and constraints, which is also called in the language of philosophy nirvana. But how can this nirvana be worked out? The supreme knowledge of self can be worked out according to Indian wisdom through multifarious methods. A very beautiful prescription has been given by the Lord in Srimad Bhagavad Gita. Lavante Brahma Nirvanam Rishayakshina Kalmasha Chinnadedha Jatatmana Sarva Bhuta Hiterata. Lavante Brahma Nirvanam Rishayakshina Kalmasha. The rishis, they attain the state of Brahma Nirvana. Brahma Nirvana is the state of the attainment of moksha, the state of attainment of freedom, the state of attainment of being established in the self. Lavante Brahma Nirvanam Rishayakshina Kalmasha. And how that state can be attained? Through the gradual dissipation of impurities, through the gradual purification of the heart. Rishayakshina Kalmasha. And who can attain that? Rishaya. It comes from the verbal root rish, and rish gato. Gato means one who has attained that state is called rishi. Rishi is not an ordinary person. Rishi is the person who has attained that state of self. Rish gato. So Lavante Brahma Nirvanam Rishayakshina Kalmasha Chinna Dvaitha Jatatmanam Sarva Bhuta Vatatmana Sarva Bhuta Hiterata. How that can be worked out? By doing the welfare for every individual in this universe, for every being in this universe, Because Ishavastamidam sarvam jat kincha jagatyam jagat. The entire universe is permeated with that self. And that self is to be realized. That self is to be attained. Jesus the Christ says, love thy neighbor as thyself. Love thy neighbors as thyself. Why do you love your neighbor as yourself? The answer perhaps is there in the Indian scriptures, because Ishavastamidam sarvam jat kincha jagatyam jagat. Because everywhere the entire world is permeated with the self, and if you engage yourself, if we engage ourselves for the welfare of every individual being of this universe, we will attain that state of moksha, we will attain this state of self. I recall that incident in London. A young Irish lady was sitting and listening to the lecture of Swami Vivekananda. Every day, and she used to take very meticulous note of the everyday talk of Swami Vivekananda. Meticulous note. But she could not realize the essence of his teachings. Therefore, she wrote a very small letter to Swami Vivekananda. You saw, asking something to Swami Vivekananda was very difficult. Vivekananda was a man of gigantic personality. He said about himself, I have emptied halls in the west. If aroused, I speak fire. This was Vivekananda. So you see how difficult it is to ask a question. People were mesmerized by his lectures, but they could not ask question. And this person, this lady, very inquisitive, curious lady, wrote a letter, can you explain me the real lessons of your teachings? Swami Vivekananda wrote a sort of reply. He wrote, Dear Miss Noble, my ideal indeed can be put into a few words. That is to teach unto mankind their divinity and how to make it manifest in every movement of life. To make it manifest in every movement of life. We all are the incarnation of the Supreme Self. The divinity is hidden within us. We have to make it manifest in every action of our life, in every movement of our life. He clearly wrote down, the world is burning with misery. Can you sleep? The world is burning with misery. You are burning with misery because you are burning with misery because you are manifested in every being of this universe. The world is suffering and we have to liberate ourselves from that suffering. Being highly inspired by Vivekananda's teaching. So what was the central essence? The central essence of Swami Vivekananda's teaching was the freedom of the soul. I am existence absolute, knowledge absolute, peace absolute. I am he, I am he, I am he. So aham, so aham, so aham. That was Swami Vivekananda. And that freedom, concept of the freedom of the soul percolated in every field of human existence. May it be in the field of politics, may it be in the field of social practices, may it be in the field of individual practices. Politics, in the perspective of polity, it is the freedom from the yoke of imperialism. Vivekananda did not directly involve himself in nationalist movement. But we know all the bands of patriots and the bands of revolutionaries were born only listening or reading to few lines of Swami Vivekananda. Sister Nivedita got herself inspired, sailed to India to uplift Indian masses. She was an Irish lady born out of Irish parentage. And when she was born of Irish parentage, and father was a priest, grandfather was a priest, and he imbibed the concept of patriotism from she imbibed the concept of patriotism from her grandfather. And there was a great inspiration within herself. She came here and dedicated herself for the education of the women folk of our country. There were no formal school for the women folk in Bengal then. She was the first person to establish a school for the girls. Of course, it started with a few number of students. But she was the first person, she was the pioneer in that field. It was not a very easy task for her to bring 7 to 10 girls to her school to study. Because people were not at all ready to send their daughters for education, and that too to a lady of alien origin. Inspiration came from Swami Vivekananda. No one was ready to send. And in certain meeting, what he did, Vivekananda just said that, come on, this gentleman will offer her child, her daughter for your school. The first lady student, the first girl student of her school. And then what happened? Gradually she started developing these schools with a few number of students. She had the nationalistic spirit within herself. The nationalistic spirit was within her. And therefore the prayer of her school was Vande Mataram. And then there was an outbreak of an epidemic called plague. Entire state was under the sway of this epidemic. Sister Nivedita offered herself for the service of the people who have been infected and affected by plague. She formed committees. She herself served, and she inspired others to serve the people, serve the suffering masses. And at the same time, she thought of gradually getting connected to the nationalist activities. Why? Because she understood that the regeneration of a nation is not possible when it is under the yoke of imperialism. She got connected with multiple people. Out of them, one was Rishi Aurobindo. And we know who Rishi Aurobindo was. Rishi Aurobindo was, on one hand, a great patriot, and on the other hand, a great Rishi, an enlightened soul. And we know who this Rishi Aurobindo was. Rishi Aurobindo was born in the year 1872 of his father Krishnadhan, Mr. Krishnadhan Ghosh. And look at the mentality of that time. At a very tender age, Aurobindo Ghosh was sent to was sent to England for English education. And the father took appropriate measures so that this Aurobindo does not get exposed to Indian culture. He never was exposed to Indian culture. He joined there in a school at England. And he was brought up in the place called Manchester. And from there, he went to King's College. After attending King's College, he appeared in the open competition for the ICS, Indian Civil Service, qualified for that, but was again disqualified because he could not present himself for the horse riding event which was included in the evaluation process. Therefore, he thought of coming back to India. Imagine a person of Indian origin, totally brought up in English culture, having no idea, no exposure of this Indian culture and Indian spirituality, responding to an unknown call, gradually sailed towards India. And it was written, it was well documented by him, that when he was approaching the Apollo Bandar, a sort of vibration occurred to him. He said that I started feeling spiritual experiences as I was approaching the land, the holy land, the sacred land, the land of spiritual vibrations. We remember the event of Swami Vivekananda returning from the West. When he returned from the West, and he was in Colombo, as he got down, he started rolling on the soil of India. People inquired, why are you rolling on the soil of India? I have been there for a long in the world, in the country of India, places of enjoyment. And now I am purifying myself with the touch of the divine soil of our land. In the first lecture in India, he stated, if there is any land on this earth that can lay claim to be the blessed Punya Bhumi, the land of introspection and spirituality, it is India. The same experience, you see, the experience which he had there in Colombo, the same experience was experienced by Aurobindo Ghosh while he was coming and he landed on the Indian soil. He went to Baroda, got himself trained in Indian scriptures and Indian languages, due to some reason not known. Why he was interested in the Vedas, why he was interested in Indian scriptures, why he was interested in Sanskrit, we do not know. And he joined the settlement department there for a job. Gradually, he shifted to the Baroda College as a professor of French and later as the professor of English. And there he came across a spiritual giant, a spiritual master, who was Vishnu Bhaskar Lele. And this Vishnu Bhaskar Lele taught him the art of silencing the mind. To his surprise, it was found that within the span of 3 days, the art of silencing the mind was mastered by Aurobindo. Some sanskaras, hidden impressions were there within him. he got himself gradually connected with the nationalist movement. And then he shifted to Kolkata, because Kolkata was the heart of nationalist movement. And there in the National College he took the work of principal and started extensively working for the nationalist movement. Finally, what happened? He was sent behind the bars. He got in contact with several people, including Nivedita too. And when he was put behind the bars for no reason, in the false Alipur bomb case, he was prisoned in a isolated confinement in Alipur jail, and he wanted a book to read. He was given a book to read, and that book was Srimad Bhagavad Gita. In his own words, he said that he has gone through the pages of Srimad Bhagavad Gita and he had a great enlightenment. He had a great enlightenment or illumination. He gone through the pages of Gita, and what was his enlightenment? What was his impression? What was his realization? He discovered himself to be a Mahatma. One discovering himself as a Mahatma. Bahunam janmanamante jnanavan mam prapadyate vasudeva sarvamiti sa Mahatma sudurlabha. Bahunam janmanamante jnanavan mam prapadyate vasudeva Janavan mam prapadyate vasudeva sarvamiti sa Mahatma sudurlabha. That everything, the entire world is permeated with the Vasudeva. You know, the word is also very important. Vas, from the Vas dhatu. Vasudeva. And Deva has come from the verbal root Div. And Div means enlightenment. The supreme enlightenment which resides in every object of this universe is the Vasudeva. The supreme light which sustains every object of this universe is the Vasudeva. And he had this experience that the entire world is nothing but the manifestation of Vasudeva. In some private conversation, he said that during this span, Swami Vivekananda in subtle body appeared before him for 15 days, for a fortnight, and explained him the essence of moksha, the essence of life divine. His friend advocate C.R. Das strongly argued for him in the court, saying that if patriotism is a crime, then Aurobindo Ghosh is surely a criminal. Aurobindo was released. He retired to southern part of India and engaged himself in the practice, in the higher practices of divine realization, which is technically termed as integral yoga. This integral yoga is nothing but the same yoga which has been propounded by the Lord in the days of yore, in the days of creation. Imam vivasvate yogam praktavan aham abhayam vivasvan manave praha manuiksha kamya pravit. I am the supreme reality. I have taught thee. Abhaya yoga, the immortal yoga, the imperishable yoga to Manu. Manu has transmitted to Ikshvaku, and Ikshvaku has transmitted to Manu to Ikshvaku, and thus the tradition of yoga flourished. Evam parampara praptam imam rajarshayo vidu sa kalena iha mahata yoga nashta parantapa. With the passage of time, that mighty yoga has been distorted and diluted. However mighty a system is, it gets distorted when it is extremely popularized, extremely proliferated. Therefore, the Lord himself took the responsibility for the revival of that system of yoga. Sa eva ayam mayate adya yoga prakta puratana bhaktosi me sakha cheti rahasyam hi etatuttama. You are my bhakta, you are my sakha, therefore I have come here to rejuvenate, I disclose the essence of yoga to you. I instruct the essence of yoga to you. And again Swami Vivekananda in the modern times, incarnation of the Supreme Lord, took up the action of rejuvenation of the system of yoga. He himself declared that I am the Supreme Reality. We all are the Supreme Reality, and therefore this rejuvenation is required. Never forget the glory of human nature. We are the greatest gods. Christ and Buddhas are the waves of boundless ocean, which I am. Again you see the declaration, the affirmation of the self. I am the self. This realization was there. And therefore he patronized, he championed the systems, main systems of yoga, Raja Yoga, Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga and Bhakti Yoga, and he worked out the synthesis for that. That synthesis of yoga has been taken up by Sri Aurobindo as integral yoga. In integral yoga, Aurobindo combined all the good aspects of different systems of yoga. All the systems of yoga are equally valid, equally potent. All the systems are valid. Ye yathamam prapadyante tams tathaiva bhajamyaham mama vartmanu vartante manushya partha sarvasha. Whosoever comes to me in whatsoever form, I reach him. All men are struggling through paths which in the end lead to me. So all paths lead to the same goal. Therefore there is no harm in combining all systems of yoga. There is no place of orthodoxy there. So integral yoga was a restatement of the message of the Lord in the days of yore, restatement of the views of Swami Vivekananda, where all the yoga has been combined along with the combination of modern science and religion. Yoga was combined with modern science and religion in the system of integral yoga. Vivekananda says that science and religion will meet and shake hands. So this is the integral yoga, and this integral yoga is about the two-way movement, the upward movement and downward movement. The individual consciousness must expand. You know, the word Brahman has come from the verbal root Brih. And Briha means expansion. So individual consciousness will expand and attain the state of supermind. And the divinity and the supreme vibration of the supermind may be descended to every object of this universe, to the physical body and every object of this universe. And that is where the beauty of integral yoga lies. The supreme reality is both transcendent and immanent. It is not something new, but it is the restatement, a vigorous, formidable restatement of the system of yoga which has been propounded in our scriptures. He never diverged from the scriptures, not diverged from the teachings of Swami Vivekananda. So you see, this Vivekananda, Aurobindo, Nivedita forms a trio. Nivedita met Aurobindo, and Aurobindo says that Nivedita involved herself in politics as a fulfillment of the vision of Swami Vivekananda. So this is a trio. And what is the goal? The goal was liberation. The goal was freedom. The goal was taking the national prestige to the highest pinnacle. The ultimate dream was dreamed by Vivekananda. I do not see in the future, nor I too care to see. But one vision I see as the light before me, that the ancient mother is awakened once more, sitting on her throne, rejuvenated, more glorious than ever. We all of us must resolve to realize this goal in our life. Thank you.